here with me. Thank you for coming onto my couch to talk about movies.
Yes.
Which this is all a hint.
I mean, popcorn on popcorn on popcorn.
This is all a hint. And milk duds. You're here to talk with me today about films. The film industry is a bajillion billion dollar industry, right? We pay a lot of money to go see movies. Everybody has a platform, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, probably all of them. So let's not pretend like this is not a serious topic. The film industry is very influential. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's how, like, not just sticking on representation in, here in the West, but without movies, without art, without cinema, like we don't get to see things. We don't get to imagine things in ways that, like, our dreams aren't just written on paper in books and in song, and there's a visual element there that we flock to, that we crave. We love to see ourselves in action, and not just ourselves, but then, like, the fantasies, the stories and narratives that have presence, that are brought to life by writers, directors, actors, and all of that. If it's not just fictional, and it's not just plot story, sometimes it's just observational, just documentaries, just travel specials, things where, like, there's a camera here that is viewing something that we've never had the privilege of seeing because we don't live in this part of the world, the globe, and that being brought to our doorstep, our phones, or whatever, it brings us closer together. It makes the world smaller just by putting something on film or on digital or on whatever.
I love that. It makes the world smaller. Yeah. Love that. So people might be wondering, who is this guy? Like, he's making sense, but who is he? So let's tell them who you are. Mm-hmm. I've known you now for a few years. I don't even remember how we met, but I've known you for a few years. Your name is Ilbersalle Fallon.
Fallon, yes.
Now, forgive me. I hope this isn't offensive, but you're the first and probably will be the last Ilbersalle I'll meet.
I'm pretty sure there's only one of me around, as far as I know. I mean, if there was another me or someone who's got this name front to back like that, I'm welcome. I welcome that sort of doppelganger effect. But, like, I'm pretty sure there's only one of me so far.
You're a very interesting person. So we're Facebook friends, and I remember one day I was just scrolling like we do, scroll.
Yeah, doom scrolling.
Yeah, doom scrolling, and I came across a movie review. It said Ilbersalle Fallon is watching in the name of the movie, and then you had written what looked like a review or criticism. I wouldn't so I guess what I'm saying is you love films. What I realized was that was one of many that you had just gotten on social media and wrote something about a movie that you had seen. Why did you start doing that?
I don't know. Part of it is slightly narcissistic. Like, hey, I have this opinion, or I have this point of view, and I want other people to see it. In that sense, and sometimes it's just how anybody talks about the things that they see, and wants other people to see it in some sort of way, or they need to get the expression of the thing that they saw out. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't go in a journal and get locked away, and sometimes it goes on Facebook, sometimes it goes on Instagram, sometimes I can try to be clever in a way. It's like, I put words together and I crop a picture of the trailer or whatever, or a thimble, and then I talked about this thing that I saw. Depending on what this thing was you came across, like I love film, I love cinema, I'm a movie head, and there are people who are much more versed than me, but, like, that's one of the things I go to, like, film and all these things, foreign films, anyway, film on film. So at one point, having worked in the industry in a couple of different facets, I have access, or have proximity to not only film creation, but film distribution, film, criticism, magazines, trades, all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, since they have all this stuff floating around, and I watch on a very regular basis, whether it's like full-length films or documentary shows, like, well, I'll put my blah on it in some way. And if it's like a film that I've seen and like I want other people to see, I can't believe this thing exists, I'll do something to that effect, some quip, some dribble, whatever, and then it'll be on my Facebook, And sometimes it's a film that people have seen, and I have very stark or strong opinions about it to left to the right, and like, I'm gonna say, well, okay, you don't not go see this movie, but here's why I have, say, beef with this, adaptation of Macbeth, for example, and here's why I can, put into my historical context why, like, this film or the way they portrayed people in this film, black people in this film, bothered me, or why I'm celebrating the work and the art of this person, and so on and so forth. So,
well, you said two things. You said, you put your oomph on the film. Your oomph is sometimes shocking, sometimes funny, sometimes very poignant. And one of the first things I recognized, I'm a writer, and I'm a good writer. The first thing I recognized when I began to see your reviews or your criticisms, your commentary, I thought, dang, he is a good writer. Ilbersalle is a really good writer. The second thing I thought was, he's not a great speller.
oh, yeah.
Many of your words are misspelled.
All misspelled.
And yet, that doesn't matter. And I'm not judging you.
No, go ahead.
It doesn't matter. That's what editors are for when you begin to do this thing, which I know you will, in a much bigger way. That's what editors are for. It is the writing that is compelling and what you're saying that got to me. You also just mentioned Macbeth. So I was up last night on Facebook looking at some of your posts, and I want to read a couple so that people kind of get an idea of what I'm saying here. So I'm going to read what you wrote about the tragedy of Macbeth. This should have been for us, the culture, too. I mean, Denzel doing Shakespeare, how cool is that, right? And I know, the Venn diagram of black people who love Denzel, appreciate old English dialogue, and happen to be Coen Brothers enthusiasts is niche to say the least. But that still means something. Denzel is a draw to the black populace no matter what he's in.
It's true.
And the effed up thing, outside of the inciting incident that I'll address in the comments, is that Joel and company knew, and in some regard were counting on those curious, dedicated black folk to attend, while simultaneously disregarding the trauma a black audience member is forced to reckon with as a consequence of the, let's just say, racial tone deafness of this film. Denzel is Denzeling his butt off, but trust me when I tell you this joint is most definitely not for us, and that's a shame. Because everything else about the cinematic adaptation of a Shakespearean classic sings. Proceed with caution if you absolutely must. That is really amazing writing for me. But you're also saying something.
I'm trying, and you've been gassing me up for a while, and I still sort of try to get my head around. Like, somebody says I'm a good writer. Somebody says I'm a good writer.
You are.
And I, if that comes from anywhere outside of me being eclectic and weird and whatever, like, the people that I gravitate towards, my friends, my community, they are a wash of poets, writers, musicians, playwrights, people who do words well, books, on tours, on all these things that were like language and words and all that sort of stuff is just like juice to me. So like I not unlike hanging around film sets and movie theaters, like my friends are mostly writers and artists. So like if anything comes from that, it's just like an homage for like the community that I steep myself into. If you know anything about the Coen Brothers, there's a long list of films and the nature of things that they do. When you think about Denzel Washington films, it's all the things they do. So the fact that they're going together and making this Black Shakespearean thing, which was cinematically great and all that sort of stuff, it was good. But the thing I had to, I guess, get out while I was watching it and engage in some of the violence and Black trauma and Black death put on film by non-Black people is what does that say? What does that do in, what was this, 2022 when this came out? Second year of the pandemic, 2 years after George Floyd, like all that sort of stuff. And it's like, these films aren't made in a vacuum. And with that in mind, like, how, in theory, how could you make something with the same sort of flair, same sort of visual, appetite, and not be, in my opinion, as violent and as obtuse to Black suffering as you could? And that's to say it doesn't exist, but I watch a lot of movies, and sometimes you can watch films that are made by and for or with Black people that have that sense in mind and can still scare you and can still, give you chills and can still, make you to emote in ways that aren't just pulling at the violence of Black death, the violence of Black suffering.
Yeah,
and
it's automatic.
Yeah.
Even, I hear what you're saying, even if you are sensitive to that and what that film can potentially do to Black people, there's sort of no getting around it.
Yeah.
Based on what we know, not only our ancestors went through, but what is happening today.
Yeah. So how do you, if you care, if it matters to you at all, how do you navigate that and make films that can be seen by all kinds of people?
I want to read this one. It's on that topic. Ilbersalle Fallon is watching The Underground Railroad. Now that was a series. I didn't do it. But
fair.
It was
Absolutely
a series,
fair.
right?
Yeah. 10-episode limited series. Amazon. Barry Jenkins wrote, direct, created it with his craft and his development company. And Barry Jenkins responsible for Moonlight, Medicine from Melancholy, and a couple of shorts and things that I'm a big fan of in terms of like Black creators in film space doing things and keeping us in mind when they do it, even if it's something slave narrative centered, which is always touchy ground for a lot of us, and how some of us will choose to engage with that and choose not to engage with that. So
here's what you wrote. The cinematic and sonic styles are unprecedented, and the feat of what Barry and company were able to do over the course of 4 years is unmatched. The substance, though, I don't know. I don't know if it was worth it for me. And by worth it, I mean the why in which I watch, to the weight in how it felt overall. All that she must endure in the viewing, in remembering, in feeling. I wouldn't have had any other filmmaker do it. I'm grateful, I guess, for his eye and the care that went into this. But I do not need another piece of art about it forever in life again. I can assure you, this is as close as anyone is ever going to get. I felt Octavia Butler and her parables. I am sad. I'm so sad. That's poignant.
I forgot I wrote that. But yeah, that's what I can say about something that Black people have to or choose to engage in or not. And in a way, it's like, well, here's what I saw, here's what I did. Go forth if you want to, and here's how I felt about it. And some of my friends, like, yeah, they're not touching that for all the reasons. And some of my friends, like, yeah, they endured it, they saw it for what it was or what it wasn't, and they have their own opinions about it. But like, yeah, it was, for me, it was a lot, and I knew that going in. But I also, because I respect and I appreciate the filmmaker in a way, it's like, well, I gotta trudge through this for this, and so here's what I'm gonna come to, and here's what I got out of that. So that was one of those things. Yeah.
So there are many more. I won't. There are many more I could read that I love, but you're also, sometimes they're as simple as Ilbersalle is watching Nightmare Alley. Why even is this movie? That's all he wrote. One that I'm going to disagree with you on, another short one you wrote, Malcolm and Marie is a comedy of errors. You're welcome. And that's a haiku. Malcolm and Marie is a comedy. It's kind of like you're welcome. Oh. I love that film. I loved it. It reminded me of old Hollywood and it was black and white, and it was shiny, and these two black people, you mean Zendaya, these two people who were in love, and the humanity of it. It was simple, I thought, and it was classic. I loved it. It was a play,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because people did, and people love Zendaya and John David Washington Jr.
Yes. I always forget his name.
Denzel's
son.
Yeah.
Denzel's son.
But for me, and this is coming from a guy in terms of their collective work, which is what I'm referencing. I wasn't and still not into Euphoria like the people around me were. And that's where Zendaya was shining, and Spider-Man, and as far as Denzel's kid, and things he's done, Tenet and Black Klansman, things like that.
And one that just came out recently with a bunch of actors. Ensemble.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those two, and I can't remember the guy who does Euphoria. But for me, it was more of a take on the guy who does Euphoria and having those two go back and forth. And the nature of, toxicity and relationship dynamics on screen like that for the sake of engagement. For me, it's not entertaining in a way that we're I want to enjoy this suffering.
Yeah.
And I want to enjoy the abuse that's being exchanged for the sake of quippy dialogue and words and things like that. But that's for me. And some people they want that and they feed off it, so it goes to them. For me, it wasn't. And there are a billion other things to watch. So for me, I saw that thing because it's on, because it was in the zeitgeist, because everybody was watching it, because we were in a pandemic. Here's my literal 7 words on the thing.
Yes.
And then I left it at that.
Yeah, I hear you, but and I'm not going to remember the name of the movie with Elizabeth Taylor and her husband. It's an old movie. They spent the whole movie suffering, arguing with one another. It was like the War of the Roses kind of film with Elizabeth Taylor. And that's what it reminded me of, only I saw a bit of myself in this version of that kind of thing. War of the Roses, same thing. I saw myself, and that was kind of cool for me, in addition to the beauty of the way the film was shot.
Okay. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
And I ain't gonna begrudge anybody who feels that way. That's the other thing. Is I can leave you to your opinion, but how dare you believe and think something is not? We're gonna fight about it, and no, because that doesn't serve tomorrow or the next day.
Yes. And that's a good segue into a point I want to make before we get to exactly why you're here with me today. When I was in my teens, 20 years old, I used to watch Siskel and Ebert. I would watch them religiously. I loved movies even then. I loved storytelling. And I, as a young girl, remember turning the TV on Siskel and Ebert, and I would sit there and watch these two middle-aged white men give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down on what movies to see. And not knowing that there were not even having at my disposal other opinions that were as prominent, I listened to them. And I believed them, which is what happens to many of us in many areas of life. We get what we're told on screen or in publications, and we believe it because it's what we have. That's why I love you and what you're doing. Here is someone who is much closer to me and maybe understanding what would serve me or what I might like. With your commentary, many times comes context. I had it, I won't read it, but I saw women talking. And I never really post about movies on social media, but that one I had to. And I posted that I watched the whole film, A-list actresses. Sure, I liked it. It's pro movie, well shot, all that. And people know what it was about. If not, you can, look it up. But I left that movie feeling like, how dare they expect me to sympathize or empathize with these white women who are being oppressed we haven't yet even dealt with what's really important to me is understanding how, again, ancestors and Black people today are still being as oppressed, but I'm supposed to, suspend my belief, sort of let go, fall into this film and feel bad for these women, which I did, but I was angry too. Like, okay, now can we also look at the plight of Black people? And again, keeping it real, stopping the pretending, we know what happens to Black people in this country. So you responded to and you wrote a very long, amazing, informative piece that gave me context about this film. Do you remember what you wrote?
No, but I can go back to leading up to Women Talking. A film that, like, I wouldn't have. I want to say it's a cheat or whatever, but like I'm a chef, I'm a cook, and being a part of the service industry just so happens to coincide with this art house cinema downtown Austin called Violet Crown. And every Monday night, if you're a service industry person, any movies that they have playing after 9 o'clock, you can get in for free. If you show them a picture of your ID or pay stub or schedule or something like that. And I've been in Austin 9 years now, almost 10 years. I knew about this thing, I think started in 2014. I even worked there for a stint. So that, I worked in Violet Crown. So with that in mind, like my sort of fixed appetite for traditional cinema, going to the movies, is propped up by this once a week Monday night affair.
That's awesome.
Right? In addition to Netflix, Hulu, or whatever, where I can watch my home. And I'm cheap and I'm poor, so like going out and putting money on movies is a very particular thing. It's got to be like, okay, I'm gonna give this tentpole Marvel joint $38, or I'm gonna give the next Barry Jenkins thing my $38, and anything in between there that I can't get on Netflix in 6 to 8 months, I'll talk about it, maybe see the trailers or whatever, but I don't have to live off of that. But on the rare occasion, like something comes through on a Monday night and I'm gonna go watch it, because I don't have to pay, I end up watching a whole bunch of stuff that I would have never otherwise put money down on, just because I like the experience. I like movies. I like having the access to that film or that thing or whatever that I otherwise might not have, because of economics and poverty and care and attention to. Anyway, so with all that in mind, Women Talking was one of those joints. But in addition to that, Women Talking, because I was directed by Sarah Polley, and she's a Canadian writer-director who's got a string of mid-indies over the last 10, 15 years. I listened to her on a podcast talk about it. I listened to I heard the history of so I had a little bit more context to this thing versus just like, oh, I'm a Black dude going to watch this movie about essentially Handmaid's Tale in what was originally, is there Colombia or
you said
Argentina?
Colombia.
I think it was in Colombia. A white, Quaker Amish Mennonite community in South America. That's where this story comes from. So I had the context to that going into watching this show for free, right?
Yes.
So outside of that, it's like, okay, so there's all that for me. Again, this is sort of niche thing, because in terms of community, Black people, I doubt 7, 8 of us really mess with that movie, and that's fine.
Yes.
But for me, because I like film and I have access to it, it's going on the board, or I'm gonna go to it. I might fall asleep. I don't care. I'm having the experience because I have access to the experience. Anyway, so coming into Women Talking, I knew a little bit about it in ways that a lot of people didn't.
Exactly.
And then when I saw people that I knew watch, Black folks that I know watch it, and had their opinions about it, like, oh yeah, there's that. And then when you posted, like, oh, and by the way, here's also why not only I sympathize, and I know how you feel to watch, sympathetic white women cry over, being abused by, their husbands and the men in their community.
Right.
and how
and the fact that they had a choice. That was the whole point of the movie, is like there was a whole movie of them talking about, well, what should we do? Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, y'all had a choice?
That must be nice, right?
Right.
It must be nice. You weren't bred, you weren't bucked, you weren't denied that for the sake of, economic stability for an entire, country and civilizations of people like black and brown and indigenous people have been since the dawn of time.
Right.
It was a white woman's response. A white Canadian woman wrote this book as a response to what she would have said or how she would have thought or how these characters would have reacted fictionally if engaged with what this happened. And there's so much, for me, there's so much, like, the word is caucasity in that it becomes comical to me. It becomes boring, becomes trite. And that's nothing against how the film was made, how it was shot, how Sarah Polley got the dresses and narrative, and how they're speaking and the
acting, great acting.
But at the root of it, it's like, well, yeah, that's why I could care absolutely less about the substance of this thing, because it's not for me.
Yes.
And here's how. And not only is it not for me, but in ways it offends me or black women and people who are actually suffering in the community. But like, that's, people get to make those movies all the time.
Right.
And that's not to begrudge them for making those movies, but it's like, well, here's my commentary on people who make those movies.
That is what I appreciate about your writing, is that in many of them you give context that has to do with society, that has to do with what we're dealing with. It's important.
Yeah, and to how you came up on Siskel and Ebert, I didn't directly, but societally speaking, like, it's the two white guys' gaze and two, white criticism of film, which is how Hollywood and that stuff is shaped. Indirectly, like, I came up on that too, in a way, based off of the movies and the westerns and all the stuff that my dad watched, or the part of the country that I was in that was culturally devoid of, black people and black influence. So my go-to initially could have been all the movies that Siskel and Ebert, recommended. And I was thinking about that in terms of the thing we're actually going to get into, the two films we're actually going to get into, and how, for me as a young, black guy in the Midwest that was raised culturally isolated, like, my heroes and my go-tos were the prevailing white, archetypes, like heroes, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and because black action or culture, things like that weren't as prevalent in my, or weren't, we're celebrating this film. Like, I went through the sort of the whitewashing gaze of film, cinema, and criticism to get to black cultural critique. And I did that first, as some of us do. That's sort of part of the uniqueness of me and how I come from. It's like, I went to that first, so I can understand, Scorsese and Coppola and Spielberg and them as like, oh yeah, I was watching Indiana Jones, and when I was 9, 10, 11, how that shaped how I see movies for a minute, and then coming back to like, oh, they were just biting off of Oscar Michel, they were just biting off of Gordon Parks, they were just utilizing black excellence and black swagger and all this sort of stuff for the white audience. They were Columbusing or Elvising a lot of what our cool was in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s when I was here. I'd say like before then, because I think when we talk about Was I Black Enough for You, that's like 60s to 70s. But that...
Let me stop you.
Yeah.
Let me stop you, because I want to show very quickly a part of the trailer for, what's the name of the film?
Is That Black Enough For You?
Is That Black Enough For You?
You are capable of great feats of strength and courage.
My grandmother told me that movies turned her dreams into something resembling stories. But the on-screen crushing of black hope was institutional.
When I was a kid, we had Stephen Fetchit, Willie Best, Buckwheat, but I still wanted to be them.
One decade answered the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or does it explode? This is the story about a group of artists that changed the culture forever.
These movies were about us.
That's a nice change.
Is that black enough for you? Elvis Mitchell's 2.5-hour documentary chronicling some of the films in his upbringing that were most influential between like 66 and 1978, 79 in there. But that chunk has influenced Hollywood, has influenced culture, black, white, whatever, across the globe. And then you sort of see that in the way he's able to, it's like, oh yeah, this movie did this movie and this movie. But you fast forward 20 years and you see it in Atlanta. You see it in I had notes. I have them all down there, but like it's just.
You can use your notes.
There was so much in that chronicling because the way I came up, like I didn't know a lot about these films. You sort of see them in the ether, like Shaft, Superfly, and that's unique. And I know there are a lot of people in culture like, yeah, my dad had this, my grandpa had this, and I know these films backwards and backward. I didn't come to it that way.
Let me echo you because I wanted you to keep going. I watched it. First of all, I think it should have been a series because it was a lot. It was overwhelming information in this 2+ hour documentary film. And that's a good thing because I'm thinking there was that many. I didn't know them either. And I'm a little bit older than you, I think. And I'm not embarrassed to say, much of what I saw in this film, I did not know.
Elvis Mitchell's a black film critic. He and this is me, like I didn't know him until like a couple of years ago, but he's our, you should have been our Siskel and Ebert.
Siskel and Ebert, okay.
And he's that now in a way where he chronicles like, he's from Detroit and these are movies that were influenced anyway. So yeah, so essentially black film creators or whatever from the birth of cinema till now, but he highlights the films in his formative years, like for the 70s, that were most influential to him, and how those films and the creators of those films changed the Hollywood industry, changed the cinema industry in ways that are being reverbed by film in general, by filmmakers in general, and some of the wildest points for that is like, yeah, a lot of these black films and black exploitation films that I've seen in documentaries in the zeitgeist before, he's highlighted them in ways where like he's putting the 6 degrees of separation as to why this film is this film, and not only the film, but like the soundtrack and the score, like
they actually pioneered the whole idea of having the soundtrack come out first.
So the film, right?
Yeah.
And like
and great, amazing music, not just any music, like
Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield, like
yes.
all those guys that were behind Shaft, behind all these iconic roles that made before, because again, like black people in cinema, we were jokes, we were caricatures, we were racist stereotypes, we were black. Like he starts at blackface. He starts at, we want to go back to Othello, Laurence Olivier in blackface playing Othello. Why? Right? But he starts there and he's like, you see that come all the way back around to Macbeth and how, well, now we got Denzel doing, King Lear, but it's still at the guides of, white people in white gays. Anyway, so Elvis Mitchell was able to sort of chronicle for him some of these films and then put tape to, oh, he did this, but I did this. The thing was, like I had to talk about this film is because I'm, I was born in the 80s, so I missed this era, of course. And I was watching, white movies and everything is out in just Hollywood stuff in the 90s and 2000s. The things that I would also gravitate for were black representation. And because it's, 3 or 4 generations past the 70s, like I remember specifically when I started because these mid '90s, late '90s, the Wesley Snipe era of like a badass, dark skinned black man who's kicking it. Like, so I gravitated towards films. Right? There's a movie that came out in 1972. It was directed by Ossie Davis, and it starred two black cops. Just I think it was Cotton Comes to Harlem. Is the name of the film. Hadn't heard about it, but when I saw the lead actor in his blue shirt with a blue tie, I'm like, I remember that's Wesley Snipes. Yeah. Like Wesley Snipes dressed exactly like that in whether it was Passenger 57 or whatever movie it was, and I knew instantly like he was lifting that from this character from 1972. And how slick and how stylized they were in the 70s, and then you fast forward 20 years when I see Wesley Snipes, like, oh yeah, that's why I like that. But Ozzy was made. Here's a representation of that, 30 years earlier, and that gets superseded again in 15 years later, 2015. You see other dark blacksmen who are slick, who have swagger, and they didn't have that. Or we didn't see it.
We didn't see it.
Not to say that there were people who we get to shine. We get to be cool. We get to be badass cops. We don't need to be, shucking and jiving for the man, all sort of shit. It's like, so this highlights some of those people who I didn't know about, but were influencing the directors and the filmmakers and the creators that I would come to revere later on.
Right.
The Spike Lees of the world, the Terrence Stamps of the world, the Barry Jenkins of the world. Like, they were watching these films coming up because they're in community, they see these films. And then generations later, I'm watching the things they make coming from the influences of these films. But what that also does is okay, once the white people have seen it and they know, black people are cool, now we're not just slaves, they take that and then they Elvis it. And they Saturday Night Fever that shit.
They Travolta it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was so beautiful seeing that.
Lifted, beat for beat. Shaft walking up through New York, Harlem, and Travolta walking up. And for me, my community, I'd never actually seen Saturday Night Fever in that way, but I know the walk, I know the Bee Gees, right? And that's iconic, right? That's iconic in a way that the Shaft walk, which is where that comes from, beat for beat, is not iconic.
Yes.
And it's Elvis Mitchell narrating it. He's every generation has got their Elvis or Eminem in this case, and it's something that Elvis and Eminem. But this was just such a beat for beat, and you see in Travolta's career and his slickness and all. That's just what's he called it? Off-white black.
Off-white black.
And once you have that, because again, I know there are people in my community that have the context. They've known that it was a lift since the 1990s. That's just Shaft. He was walking up there. For me, seeing it for the first time, it's oh, and then you see it again. You see the remix of it again. It's oh, that's why these films. That's why half of these things we don't see have been buried or have been pushed aside because. Right. Once white people get it, they can make it theirs, and then we don't know what the origins are. We don't have a history for it.
But we can sense it, and I think, I saw that too. That was my first time seeing that comparison or that side by side, and I'm like, what? Why did I gravitate towards Saturday Night Fever? I mean,
because white folks aren't. Because it's us.
It's us.
It's us.
That's what I'm saying. I sensed something in that swagger or whatever it was that drew me to it. His way of being. So it makes complete sense.
I was why is that so? Because it's black, and we don't know what the origins are. We didn't see us doing but there's a list, and there are movies where in this documentary where you get to see us being
it's out there.
Travolta before Travolta was Travolta, and it's
cool.
Wow.
Another one, I love Quentin Tarantino. I love many of his films. Reservoir Dogs. There was the scene with Keitel and the others talking. I think it was Harvey Keitel.
Yeah.
They're talking, and it's that language sounds familiar.
Because it's black. It's black.
Because it's black.
Because it's black.
Yes.
And that's why Tarantino knows everything he's got to all the people he's homaged in his stuff.
Yes.
And when he's not doing it, You can see it.
Is there anything else specifically you want to mention about this?
Oh, Rocky, fuck, fucking Stallone. Sorry, but yeah, because the steps, the all that sort of stuff. That's
yeah.
And again, there are generations of black folks and people that know all of that was black, that know all, and that they've been like, yeah, it's just fucking biting and for me, not knowing, not being raised on that, and having to come to it in my 30s and 80s, like, oh yeah, this is the white version of this, so this is the white version, and so on and so forth. When he's talking about, essentially Stallone doing what, this is like 70, 76, 77. Yeah, it's just the white version of Jack Johnson, of course, and I understood that, but him pounding meat, that's black. Him going up the steps, that's black.
Yes.
Him, and then the Ali caricature, which I didn't understand because I didn't, black folks, we love Ali. We know,
right.
and Oscar references Ali a couple of times because of the nature of how cool and how collected and how, with principle, this Muhammad Ali was, and how like Balboa in the fight with Apollo Creed,
yes,
it's a mockery of the bravado that Ali actually had in the ring, because he could back it up and he could take the hits and he could beat you down and win,
yes,
but he could also be silly and duck and dodge because he had that. But that and Carl Weathers being a full 6-7 inches taller than Stallone. That was such
a great segment.
That you can see how the line is, I needed a chiropractor after watching him bent his frame down to Rocky's punch. And that's, for me, that's what a lot of it is. It's like
such a metaphor.
The best thing the best thing white folks have, the best thing about white folks is black folks. The best thing about white, and it's not just that race thing, but we do it better. We do it authentically, and when it's done backwards to us, you see how it folds. You see how the thing falls apart, and it doesn't always fall apart because, again, Rocky, all these things, it's successful by white centers. It's all the Oscars, all the acclaim. It's the reason Stallone is a billionaire. It's the reason Scorsese. It's the reason Tarantino is gonna make films with all the reason Tarantino is making films. But you look at this documentary that was able to say, like, here's actually the root of these things.
Right.
And if you didn't know this, it's there for you.
Now you know.
Right.
And what I got from that metaphor was I love that line about the chiropractor and having to fold, but that is, it's so relatable in many different areas of our society, where you see the black people really having to fold, minimize themselves, blunt their shine, which is why we're constantly telling one another, don't do that, shine. But when you shine, that means you're out there.
You can't be too bright.
You can't be too bright. So, but that whole, yes, the chiropractor, watch the film.
I have to say this because we just lost them. Harry Belafonte's interview at the sort of start of this thing, and you see him again. It was because not my generation, but like there's a sort of prevalence in like, well, he would have been my parents' generation before me, who were watching Belafonte films and stuff. I don't know how to speak to it without just like I've recorded that clip of him just saying like he was an actor. He was a singer. He was a performer. He had vocal range, and in his heyday, he was the Muhammad Ali of black entertainers, whereby he took himself out in his prime because principally he did not want to be subordinate. He did not want to stoop down to corporate structures or the studio system that wanted him to shuck and jive and say. He's like, in the interview, he's like, I was the world knew who I was, right? I'm paraphrasing wrong. You just watch the thing. I'm gonna chop this up, but like, the world knew who I was, so I didn't need this movie or this thing because I could go anywhere in the world and be propped up by my own self, right? So I didn't need to be in a studio and do these lines or whatever. And if you knew that, then I wasn't gonna take anything from anybody telling me otherwise.
Yes.
And listening to, at the time, I think it's like he was 82, 83 when he did this interview, and listening to say, I couldn't be fucked with, blew my mind.
I know.
Like, oh, wow, what?
What? Said,
I don't have to listen to you. Fuck you, I'll go to Paris. I'll live there if I want.
Right.
Like, because I'm not stupid in this shit.
Right.
And just seeing Harry Belafonte and his wisdom say that to me is like, I'm only 10 minutes into this thing?
Yes, I know. All right. And then they moved on to a whole bunch of more searing things like that.
It should have been a series.
And we all know Belafonte, but these are the things exactly like, wow. They go deep into what happened with him.
Context,
and
right?
And then you got, on the other side of that, his own response to what happened and why. I mean, it was really well put together. It's just so much. It was just a lot.
Yeah, and so like watching this section, watching with the pen and pad, and I guess what I say is like, you don't have to watch all these movies, but have a sense of like that if you've never thought to have it before, because it's empowering in a way where like it makes you want to go out and talk about this shit and see if other people are going to talk about this in a way where like Elvis did something here. And I listened to him talk about this just because the movie premiered, and of course I didn't see it in theaters, but like when it came out on Netflix, I forgot what it was up against at the time, but it's very important in Black cinema critique, and that's saying something in ways where like, I watch movies on movies, but like this thing is part of the why to that, and it's part of like a shine to somebody else who also watch movies and wants to see us do and has seen us for generations do great, and sometimes we don't even know it.
We don't know it, but this is a foundation that's a little late for many of us, but it's really a foundational film. Yeah. Anyone who loves film, anyone who loves Black film should absolutely watch it. We were going to discuss another film. We can talk briefly about it.
Sierra Leonean writer-director Nikyatu Jusu.
Nikyatu Jusu.
Yeah, she shot it during the pandemic. The early part of the pandemic. It's called Nanny. It also stars.
Nanny.
I'm sorry, it doesn't star Natalie Paul. I forget the actress's name, but she's beautiful, dark skin, and she's gorgeous, right?
Yes.
It's Black. It's supernatural. Her
name is Anna Diop.
Anna Diop. There are horror elements. There's African futurism elements. Mami Wata, Oshun, like these elements are.
There's Black love.
There's Black love in a way that isn't. Yeah. So I followed her on social media while she was shooting this thing in the pandemic, and every day she'd post online, she'd, get in the mask, and so I'm like, whatever's happening, whatever comes out, just I'd shoot her DMs like, just let me know. I'm 100% behind you. So I saw it get picked up. I saw it get sold to Amazon. I saw the release date I think it was like June 2021. So like, I knew when it was coming out, knew I was gonna watch it, and so it comes back around. It's there. It's on Amazon Prime right now, and I'm not really a horror guy because it's hard enough being Black.
Yes.
And not to jump back into is that Black enough for you, but he mentions that in a way where like Black horror is this thing that it's almost contrived because we live here and everything's worth.
Yes.
But the way that they were able to create this thing that utilizes our understanding of psychological suspense and thrill that isn't violent, that isn't careless, I appreciate it. So in going to watch this thing and seeing the beauty and seeing how Black skin and seeing how vibrant and assured we are in New York under capitalism and whatever, it was a breath And again, this is I'm not really like I could skip horror movies and things like that, but because I knew where this thing was created from, because I appreciated the subject and context, I was able to watch this thing and be like, oh yeah, I see that. I see the care taken here, and
it's a beautiful film. It's
Right.
absolutely gorgeous to watch. I felt like there were several themes, at least 4 themes going on that you had to follow. Immigration, and we're going to do actually an episode on Black immigrants. But the immigration storyline was profoundly sad. I mean, it was heartbreaking. The story they told with regard to that.
But it's so common.
That's what I'm learning.
It is so common.
Yes, but the only criticism I had about this movie, Nanny, is I love the term Black Girl Magic. You talked about the mysticism and all that. I love the term that we use, Black Girl Magic. I get what it means. I'm all for that. What I wondered, this film, if there were not those elements of, in many films, Black people have to carry that element of the mystic, of the, voodoo and the occult. I guess not occult, but there's that connection. I thought about the film, did you see Rachel at the Wedding? Which was just a film about a white girl dealing with such severe heartbreak. And there was no magic, there was no mysticism. It was just a story that was very human. That's my point, that sometimes I kind of felt like with Nanny, as much as I love the film, that whole connection to magic, I forget the word you used, maybe it was mysticism.
African futurism.
Kind of works to dehumanize us. So I thought, could this movie have been done without any of that whole, the mermaid, the magic? I don't know. That's just what I thought.
Okay. Was it Rachel getting married?
Just the story. What did I say? Rachel at the Wedding?
Yeah.
Rachel getting married.
I
Thank you.
kind of remember that one. I forget her
My
name.
daughter was just talking about it.
Right.
Who is in it? Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway. Yep. Rachel getting married. So to that, I disagree in ways where, like, it's something that's within us, and it's something that you don't see in a way. Like, compared to Rachel getting married, like, yes, that's drama, but there's nothing otherworldly about a sad white girl, right?
Okay.
So there is sadness.
A sad white girl might disagree, but I don't know.
But I'm comparing this to a woman. They're not to spoil anything, but there are supernatural elements in fear that are visually represented by dreams and nightmares and apparitions, and those are within us, and those are what carry us to and fro across this world. And some people believe in them highly and spiritually, and some people hold them on their shoulders like this. But for me, it's like, where do you see that in cinema? Like, we're for the most part, we withhold that to a degree, and you don't see films with Black, let's say, mysticism or those spiritual elements, that they're not being caricaturized.
Right. I will agree with that. And this was not a caricature at all.
No, and I think because there's supposed to be the element of horror in quotes, that isn't just pain and violence and drama. That's where those otherworldly or supernatural elements come in, because without them, then it is, for me, it is just the drama of
this story.
Not to spoil anything, but the drama of, like, the thing or the fears that are manifesting in her, and you don't see the buildup with that without the dreams, without water being present, without the Anansi, the spider, being seen and represented in smaller parts and different things, and not just racism and classism and modernity in ways that it's, you know, a white woman and her child, or a white man and her child, and then a black immigrant and her child and their children, and immigrant nannies and caretakers in that sense, because those sort of stories are told quite a bit, and they can be comical, they can be, you know, dramatic, but rarely, if ever, have I seen them with those spiritual elements in them being used in this way that, for me, is effective for the characters and it's effective for the plot, and that has a representational element to, like, yeah, we get to see Mama Wata, right, in ways so I hadn't seen her on film before, right. We get to see the grandmother of the love interest speak to the Marabou speak to spirituality, like a griot, in a way where, like, I hadn't seen that in film before. So, and
the Black Mermaid, she was a mermaid. I mean, everybody's getting all upset over a Little Mermaid, and, you know. Yeah,
so we can go into that too, and this one precedes that one. And where have you seen a Black Mermaid? Where have you seen a Black Mermaid? And the way this thing was done, how it was shot, the beauty of it, like I welcome those elements when they're done and they're put to use in a way where it's like I would have appreciated this film a lot less without them. And what film would I have been watching if you removed them from this film?
We're out of time. But before we go, there was one more. I don't know, what are we calling them? Critiques, commentaries.
I can't just put as the thing, right? I don't know.
You mentioned Licorice Pizza, which I have not seen. I have not seen that, but I did see your. So, do you want to read it? I don't mind reading it.
I forget how much I curse in this one.
This one I see right away one curse word that I'm not, but you know, right. It's an F-bomb.
So,
okay.
Licorice,
I'm just gonna,
Licorice Pizza. Paul Thomas Anderson, right, and the kids. There are adults in this movie, but they're substantive characters to move the plot forward with I think he's a dopey-headed white high schooler from the Valley or someplace, and it's a period piece. I can't remember if it was like the 80s or when this. No, was this the 70s?
It looked like it was the 80s. Well, I don't.
Whatever the formative years of Paul Thomas Anderson were, that's where he set this thing up around. And my thing was, again, this was a Monday night, you know, screener, because again, I wasn't. Am I gonna get money? No, if I go watch it for free, I'm gonna watch it for free. And very popular, critically acclaimed.
Yes.
Which also, I was like, okay, if everybody's talking about Licorice Pizza, let's watch it. Is it gonna be out? Okay, I'm gonna watch it. So for me, like, I like a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's work. Particularly, and people are gonna cry for this. Punch Drunk Love is one of my low-key go-tos for, you know, weird oddball romance films that are off kilter for, like, the type of stuff that I usually watch, or, you know, culturally speaking. People are, what the fuck is Punch Drunk Love? It doesn't matter. It's a Adam Sandler joint with Emma Watson, and anyway, Paul Thomas Anderson also did There Will Be Blood with
I love There Will Be Blood.
What's his name? Who's got all the actors? My Left Foot, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know him, but I can't remember his name right this second.
My Left Foot dude, The Master with Philip Seymour Hoffman. Now and Joaquin Phoenix. I like the performance in that movie. Anyway, so Paul Thomas Anderson's got a reel. Boogie Nights I have yet to see. I don't think I ever will. But anyway, one of the American auteurs of cinema, Paul Thomas Anderson. Yes. Right up there with the Coen brothers. Yes. Like beat for beat. He makes a movie every 3 to 5 years.
Let me read what you wrote. Licorice Pizza. Ilbersalle Fallon is watching Licorice Pizza. The movie was effing infuriating. I understand Paul Thomas Anderson is known for making insufferable characters. I've actually enjoyed quite a few of them. But Jesus Christ, A world in which a 15-year-old child actor can pimp a 25-year-old girl out of her bra, but still need his mom to drive him to the Shake Shack after school, isn't a world I want to know exists. Least of all expound upon for 2.5 hours. Ugh. That lets me know how you feel. For sure. For sure.
And people love this film.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I love you. I trust your instinct, your gut. I didn't like it. I didn't like that joint.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. And for me, because I've been told I am a film snob versus a film enthusiast, it's a lot of my stuff is out the beaten path. A lot of my stuff is like you're gonna care less or not about this, 28th indie from Sarah Polley versus whatever movie like Spike Lee has coming down the pipe.
Yes.
But I engage with most of it. Again, there are avenues, economically speaking, that I can't throw $60 a month in movies. But like if I have access to it by means of like my friends, Netflix password or no, actually I pay for Netflix. So never mind that. I pay for Netflix, right? I don't Hulu, HBO.
Yeah. Netflix
Freeform,
is clamping down on the past.
I've seen the stuff. So anyway, so yeah, if you can watch the stuff for your own and then come talk to me about it. For me, it's like I like people watching movies.
Yes.
Whether I like them or not.
Yes.
And I like talk to people who watch movies.
Right. And that's what I love. I mean, I'm going to watch a movie I want to watch, but I love hearing your take on it. And I think I will repeat, you are a wonderful writer. So you are going to figure out if this is something you want to do in a more, I don't know, constructed way. I would recommend it.
I said constructed.
And I want to stay in touch with you. I want you to come back. I love films. I'm a filmmaker, so I want you to come back and let's talk more about films. And I want to see you, I want to see what you can do on what kind of platform, be it podcast or something that's written that you share on your website. I want to see that happen. I think people would love that.
Yeah, the most encouraging person, aside from myself, is definitely you. And again, you gas me up. Just sort of put that in the.
I don't gas people up. I tell people when I see talent, I tell them I see talent there, and
yeah, the engine needs fuel. But
yes,
sure. And it's welcoming. I can't not do anything with it. But also like the encouragement and enthusiasm that comes with somebody saying that you are good or decent or whatever. This thing, it puts fire to that. So I don't know what that thing is yet. I
think
know
it will materialize.
Yeah, I know I'm gonna keep doing these things in a way where like it's an exercise for me in putting words together. Right? I'm gonna keep doing that because I like it and it serves me. And sometimes it gets me on couches in interview rooms and
with popcorn.
And I get to talk about movies with my friends. I guess that's ultimately what I want to do. I want people to watch some of these movies. I want people to think sometimes about these movies like why do we have this version of this movie? And I want people to have a good time.
And I want that. I want to hear from other people, particularly in Black film, what more than thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, what is this about?
Yeah, I got to break my bones to give this critique. Do I give context to it? And I guess the other part of that, I think, if you go back to like what started this in a way, it's like this. For me, it isn't just frivolous in a way that without movies or entertainment or the shows I watch, like it doesn't serve me. It doesn't. For me, these things do. There's a counterbalance to the immense weight of capitalism under the guise of this country and all the systems that are weighing down. Like I got to pay bills and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like without getting the release or without getting the dopamine of sitting and enjoying or intending to enjoy something, or sitting and grinding my teeth together about the opportunity I can get online and bash this film. Not that I don't want to do that, but anyway, the opportunity to exchange with the art or the whatever thing I just watched. Yeah. Like that's also fueling. That's also for me, it's a pleasurable thing. Like I didn't enjoy licorice pizza at all. Like it was infuriating. It made me angry in ways that weren't just about race, that weren't just about, you know, this and that. But I enjoyed, and I took sort of pride and pleasure in being able to, you know, put a little quip together that some people are like, oh yeah, I see what you want.
Yeah.
And that sort of, you know, co-signing made the sort of me grinding my gears, made that good for me in a way, even if the experience wasn't, you know, intendedly pleasurable. Because like I also had the privilege of having that experience, and again that comes with, well, because I work in the industry, I can go watch this movie for free.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't cost me anything and I get something out of it, well, I'm win-win, even if the movie sucks.
Thank you for sharing your commentary, and keep it up, and we will keep in touch with you, and we'll have you back.
Cool.
Thank you. Thanks for watching Brainstorm Black. We'll see you next time.